everyone, welcome to an episode of Preppers Fireside, and I'm joined today by Brian, Scottish Prepper 73. How are you doing, Brian?
Good, mate. Good, thank you.
Excellent. And Ema from Striving for Self-Sufficiency. How are you doing, Ema?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you.
Excellent, excellent. Yes, so we're not going to go through news because it's all politics, so we'll leave that one for you to discover on your own and see who's going to fail us next time round. But this episode is all about supplies. We might be joined by Josh at some point, so we could have a fourth pop in at some point. I'll just mention that. So this one's all about supplies, but after SHTF or after the event, whatever the event may be, based around something that would knock out kind of the power grid or something like that, something where it would be social collapse. So as a prepper, you'd like to think you've got everything ready. But I have put a video out recently that was like, my first thing would be to take whatever change in cash I've got in the hands and go to the local shop and get extras. So I'm curious to see, what have you put thought into this, Brian? What would you, if the lights go out tomorrow, are you just going to stay hidden for 30 days or are you going to go out and try and get some last minute supplies?
It depends, because the question relies on a certain amount of prior knowledge. If you knew that the lights were never going to come back on for that amount of time, you would have to do something. On the first day, I mean, we've spoken about this 17 times, that book, First, Second, After, I honestly think should be required reading purely for this subject. But for the first day, people would still be like, during lockdown, everybody was happy and smiley, they're not at their work, they're unsure, they're a bit nervous. Mm-hmm. Second day, lack of news might be getting to people. For likes of us, second and third day, you should really be spending any cash you've got, because people in your small corner shop that might be willing to take cash in exchange, that they'll be open regardless. You've got a chance of spending the cash before it comes tinder for your fire. 3 or 4 days, people are going to be knocking doors. They might be noticing if you've got solar panels on the roof or you've got lights on or whatever. Yeah. Can you charge my phone? Have you heard anything on the radio? It's a good thing and it's a bad thing. It gives you a certain amount of leverage. Information is power, regardless of what people think. And it'll possibly make you a nucleus for other people to gravitate to. If it becomes a long-term thing, perhaps maybe a week or whatever, and you've heard no news, I think you've got to be taking preemptive action. So if we're talking sake, you've got a supermarket or store nearby, then okay, the street you're in, you've been knocking doors, you've been talking to people, you get a high-vis vest out somebody's car or shed, you put somebody on the door of the shop, and you form a community council or whatever you want to call it, and you confiscate the food with a view to collective good and sending it out to people before it gets ram-raided and a snatch all, everyone for themselves type thing. You need to try and establish a certain amount of control. If you turn turtle and bunker up in your house for 30 days or longer, at some point questions will be asked. Where are you? What have you got? Human nature comes to the fore. Yeah. The supplies that you have got, I mean, they're a trading mechanism, if nothing else. If you help me, Jimmy, open the shop door so that I can help feed your family, I'll give you a rat pack. You know,
Brian's going through the entire video and all my notes are one question. We'll just sit here and watch Ema. This is a Scottish Prepper.
I'm so sorry. I was just trying to answer it.
I'm watching the questions like tick away. I'm just like, no, what would you do? That was it. For the first week, is that kind of your answer? You'd give it that time to see like that 3 days, if not.
I would give it 3 days.
3 days.
With no information at all, absolutely zero, nothing on the radio, powers down. I think at 3 days you would have to assume the worst. And day 2, you'd be speaking to people next door, neighbours in your village, town, and be letting them know, look, after another day, this, without knowing anything, we might need to do something about this and take some sort of action. Nothing, well, not anything that would hurt or harm people, and nothing overtly criminal, but ultimately if you have to requisition food supplies to feed people, so be it. In the absence of law and order or command and control, you'd have to be proactive.
Yeah. So, Emma, you might have a different perspective from this, because obviously you're striving for self-sufficiency, but I don't think you're at the point where you could grow absolutely everything you eat, right, at the moment. Am I right in saying that? You're not completely there?
Yeah, absolutely. Like even compost, I'm still going to the local garden centre for compost, because I'm waiting for mine, my food and that to rot down. So these things take time. So, I mean, I was listening to Brian thinking, gosh, he's really thought about this. I've not thought about the finer details of like day 1, day 2, day 3. So yeah, it's quite overwhelming, isn't it? There's so many aspects to think about, and you don't know at what stage, like day 2, will there be local people knocking on your door, or just to find out information? Like it's hard to sort of comprehend.
I live in a street where people would be literally stood out their front doors going, "Is your power on? Hello," like all friendly for the first week, and then they realise they've nothing left. But so, if for yourself, Emma, have you put any thought into that? Like, if it happened, if an event happened, would you go out and try and get these last minute supplies and fight the crowds? Would you have to?
I think you'd be tempted. I don't know. I suppose I know that there's things I've got less of in store than others, and I think I probably would be tempted to go out and get the last minute bits. But definitely keeping it local, so it's like the nearest supermarket. I'm not gonna trek all over to the all big 4 nearest supermarkets. You're gonna try, and you're going to get an idea of like, well, if it's like this here, it's going to be busy everywhere else. Give up now, sort of thing.
I think local shops is the one for that, because often they either live there or they open no matter what. They're open on Christmas Day selling you batteries and stuff like that. So they're usually the people that will take cash up until the point. I mean, by the time they realise the cash is worthless, they'll have an empty shop. So, but yeah, I think local's the way to go with that, because a lot of supermarkets, the staff are not bothered. They'll care about their own. Oh, we've no card machines, or just don't serve anyone. Let's go home. There's no incentive for them to then try and put a cash sale through. So, right. So, what do you buy is the one I put next, Brian. Is it food that you'd be going for with that last shopping run?
It'll depend what you've got. So what are you deficient in? What do you still need? How much free cash you've got at the ATMs down? So assuming you've got plenty of water, you've got your home, stick to the basics, get more food. So tins, for meal multipliers, long-term food like rice, pastas, that sort of thing, stuff that can keep, you don't need to rely on a fridge. So but I would go for the staples first and foremost. Yeah,
definitely. I mean, I would like to think I've got the food, so I'd be looking for the stupid things that I keep meaning to get and not getting, like tools for the gardening side of things. You're probably as well ahead of that side of things, Emma, when it comes to the tools and that. Would it be food for you that you'd be looking to spend the last of the cash on?
I think because I know, I know I'm all right for some of the staples, but actually it's things like meat. It's like the more expensive items that I don't keep quite as large quantities of. So I think I'd be maybe going for a few luxuries like that. But again, it depends what sort of scenario. If there's no fridge freezer, there's no electricity for fridge freezers, then
plenty of salt to salt your meat. It'll last for a long time if you salt it correctly. Quickly in the comments, because I've not even acknowledged the comments. What a terrible host. We've got Mark, Lilith, Atom Blue, Annie Green, all saying hello. Ricky Randall, Barry J. Page every evening. I'm just going to skim through these. Sorry, guys. You don't grab my attention, I will miss it, I'm afraid. Ready Prepper One, nice to see you in here. Often these guys are having their own conversation. I'm just trying to see if they've asked us for anything. They just ignore us talking. They just have their own talks there. Get medical supplies and paracetamol, TR says. That's an interesting one because that's one of the preps I think that I'm behind on at the moment. Put any thought into medical supplies, Brian?
Yes, I've got quite a bit. But if you were there and you'd exhausted the food supplies, I would always take more if they had them. If they had enough to sell and I had the money, yeah. If nothing else, it's good trading stock because you don't know when or if you can replenish it. So yeah, good call. You can't go wrong with any of
that. Ema, when it comes to the medical side of things, I mean, my biggest fear is a lack of antibiotics. A little nick, a little cut can be a nightmare. But when it comes to the over-the-shelf stuff, are you pretty okay with that, or is that something you'd have to rush out for as well?
I'm okay for paracetamol and ibuprofen, and that was a lesson learned because in 2021, a partner and I both came down with COVID, felt really unwell, and there was no medicine in the house. And ever since then, it's like, right, never again, because actually when you're both unwell, you're getting through quite a lot if it's 2 tablets every 4 hours, and you get through it quite quickly. So that's my lesson learned. Yeah, definitely have plenty of that in store.
Stock up on that, yeah, definitely. So what about safety? We've seen how crazy people get when the power's still on and they're just, restricting the supermarkets and making you, the guy with the mask that's not over his nose is making you wear your mask over your whole face because he's contradicting himself and all that lovely stuff that we could go into one day, but let's not. We saw how bad the stores got then, and we saw how bad people got, when you're fighting over toilet roll. There's not a shortage of toilet roll, people. It's just a big shelf space to fill. So there's 20 instead of 2,000, all right? But what about safety when it comes to going out for these supplies, Brian? Have you had any thoughts of that? Because obviously the rule of law at that early stage will still be in place. So we're not going to throw, a crossbow or a shotgun or something like that on our back and run to the shop that way.
And there's no real need to. I mean, the thing I worry about is when is it time to pull the pin and go to worst case scenario, because you'll always be hoping for a message or power to come back, and the worry that you go too early to worst case. I mean, you could be standing outside Tesco with a crowbar on day 3 when the lights come back on, and that's always at the back of your mind. So
that was the ending of that Channel 4 one, right?
I never saw that.
Did you not see that one, the blackout one? He'd finally decided he had to go out and do this, and he ended up beating somebody half to death in a supermarket. And just as he finished, all the lights came back on and the CCTV kicked in.
That is a genuine worry, that is when does hesitancy overcome your instinct to do something that you think you have to do? I think day 3 you've got to be making, if you've got no radio comms or anything on your FM radio, emergency radio, if you've got no information, you've got to trust your instinct and preserve your home, your street, your village, and push and extend for there. But if you were going shopping, do it the first day. Nobody's going to be running about with hanging off lampposts and tearing up sheets in the street. It's not going to happen because they'll be nice and happy and it's a day off work. So
yeah, you've got that ignorance for the first couple of days.
Yeah. First day's the only day I would broach the shops at all in terms of exchanging cash. That would be it.
Yeah. Does the safety side of it concern you at all, Ema, with something like that?
A little bit, but it's like how severe are we talking? Because it's not like I'm a petite woman, so there's no chance that I would be able to,
listen to the bodybuilder underselling yourself.
But it's just I think, like Brian says, if day 1 is the best time to go out, I think I'd be reluctant. If I thought I was in any danger, I just wouldn't go out. I don't think, or I'd run. I'd just go quick. But yeah, it's I don't know it's difficult. I don't know how I'd be able to defend myself.
Yeah.
Tea.
Yeah. I mean, Tuck there has said that it's never safe to go out for supplies. It's safer pre-crisis than midlife crisis. I'm talking about myself there. Mid-crisis. But I mean, he's right in a way. We'd all love to be fully prepped, but things happen. You know, there's no timing on this. There's no one saying this is going to happen in 3 weeks. Oh, excellent. I'm going to get paid in 2 so I can go. There is none of that. This can happen at the worst possible time. You might have just had a big bill for your boiler and all of a sudden there's no power. So there is no way you can predict that. You might have to go out. That's the point.
I think in daylight on the first day and you get no power, if you've got £100 of cash in the house, it's not going to damage your holiday budget greatly to run out and stock up on some batteries, some paracetamol, some tins of food. However, if you don't do it, the consequences further down the line could be a lot less than getting a couple of margaritas at the bar in Spain. So, but certainly after the first day of no power and no comms, no radio traffic, I wouldn't be venturing out at night time, and I certainly wouldn't be going to the shops after that, unless it was to take the shop.
Common sense, really, at the end of the day, isn't it? That's what we're talking about here. Right, let's skip ahead time. 30 days have gone by, you know, few have perished. You know, people have ran out of pot noodles and they've stabbed each other for a Twix, whatever's gone on. But 30 days have passed either way, and now your supplies are getting low. This is where you have to go out. So the question now is, what's left and where to look? Have you put any thought into this, Brian? Because surely by that stage, supermarkets have completely been ransacked, right?
In that scenario, 30 days have passed. Geography is going to come into play. Do you have any means of transport? Do you have somebody to stay at home and look after your children whilst you're out foraging? Is there somebody to go foraging with you? Because one is none. There's no redundancy in you going foraging. All you are is a target. And you can't carry enough to make it a worthwhile venture for the risk. So, assuming you've got a retail park, or perhaps you've got an industrial estate nearby, that would be your protocol. Industrial estates, whether it's a cement factory, they'll have first aid kits in them. There's things they've got to have by law. They'll have fire extinguishers. They might have other things that you can use. They might have a staff canteen with a vending machine. So, or distribution centres for, like, say, Asda, smaller shopping, supermarkets, that kind of thing. Distribution hubs, or assuming they're quiet and nobody else is the same idea, failing that, every other business premises will have something in it, whether it's a first aid kit or anything else that you could use. They're worth a shot.
Yeah. With a situation like that, Ema, would you try and avoid people, like he's saying, in them distributions, or do you think everyone's just focused on supplies? You could just run in and get them. Have you put any thought into that kind of timeline?
I've always sort of thought, like, if I'm really desperate, I'm going to forage, and I'm really fortunate to live on I've got a large garden. Like, if I look out the window at the minute, like, we've got nettles, we've got dandelions, elderflower. I know it's not much, but it's enough to, if you're talking like survival, you make the most of what's out there. I think I'd be reluctant. I mean, you have to weigh up the risks, don't you? And be sensible about it. But I think if I was on my own, I wouldn't feel confident going out looking for supplies, and even like I wouldn't want to send my partner out because then I'm on my own again. So yeah, I think I'd rather like look what's available on the land I've got.
If you're in a more rural area like that, is this whole scavenging for supplies thing, does that then lend itself to other farmers' fields? They've got crops that nobody's harvested and stuff like that. If you know what you're looking for, is that something you could consider?
Possibly. I mean, annoyingly, it's mostly like neighbours around here have all got horses. So, but
good meat on horse.
but yeah, even just like looking what's in the hedges, what's growing. But then time of year is another issue, because like winter is going to be a whole different story, isn't it?
Yeah. Have you tested the yield on the stuff around there, like how much you could actually gather and how long that could sustain you for? Because that would be a worthwhile test looking at.
I know last year we had like a glut of blackberries, and I was still eating them like months, for months. So that's, I feel good about that. But that's about it, really.
Just going to live off blackberries. Excellent. I mean, I've always thought, because the supermarkets are going to be ransacked, at what stage do you start looking at people's houses? And I'm not talking about breaking and entering. Don't forget, by the way, guys, everything we talk about is theoretical.
Yeah.
So if you report us, just go away. I'm not talking about breaking into somebody's house who's occupied. You don't want any sort of conflict. You don't want any sort of fight there. But you know your area. You know what's a holiday home that nobody's been in. You know what's, they've gone off to their family because the car's always on the... You kind of have an idea of what houses are empty. At what stage would you start looking at them, Brian? Or would you?
It's a difficult one because, I mean, after 30 days of no power, no sanitation, no mains water, you've had a lot of problems to overcome before then. And that's just trying to gather a nucleus of like-minded people round about you and explain the gravity and motivate them to do what they need to do to survive.
Yeah.
So it's a difficult one, mate. You might even do it earlier than that. It depends if people have decided we're going to run to the hills and live off squirrels and nuts. If that's the case, I would like to think it wouldn't be in your local area anyway, but if you knew somebody had definitely left and they'd been out for a number of days and other people are hungry and need some place to live, well, you would have to sequester the house.
Yeah. How does that line up with OPSEC for people that want to do this whole grey man, nobody lives here, this is abandoned, so you don't want to come in here kind of thing? Because that might be something you look at and think, oh, there you go, there's an empty house. And it's not. They've done that on purpose.
I think if you're going to somebody's door and 30 days have passed, there's a lot of dead bodies in the street, people are nervous and prone to do rash acts because they have to stay alive, you want to be very sure you're ground before you go in any door.
Yeah. Yeah. Scavenging for you, Ema, is that a bit different? I mean, I assume you've got less neighbours than us urban people have.
Yeah, not loads of neighbours. And also you think, well, we're preppers, so we've got more than they probably have, if I'm being presumptuous. Yeah. So you sort of think, well, what are they going to have that I don't? Is that?
Yeah. But I mean, this is the stage where you're at 30 days and a lot of your stuff is starting to go down. You know what I mean? Yeah, you're probably at the stage where you're relying more and more on that stuff you're scavenging and the stuff you have growing nearby.
Never say never, I think. I don't know how I'm going to feel in that kind of scenario, but you might. Your survival instincts may well just kick in.
It's a good point. It's a good point. Brian, where does the line come between looting and scavenging? And at what point are you beyond? I mean, looting to me is just the chaos where people are going grabbing tellies and stuff like that. But
I think they're two different things. Looting is accumulating things without a plan. Scavenging is getting what you need to sustain your life and survivability of your family. I think they're two different things. If I was going into a shop or a supermarket day 3 or 4, a TV is of absolutely no worth to me unless you want to improvise a solar panel further down the line. But ultimately your priorities are food, water, medical supplies. If nutters want to run about with that sort of stuff, on you go. It means they're not chasing you for a tin of beans down the street. So looters, people that are scavenging, two different things.
Yeah, it's but like Ema said, it's a bit of a moral dilemma when you're going into people's houses. You might feel like you're taking their stuff. At what point survival takes over is the question more so, really.
I think if we're still talking 30 days, you have nothing on the FM radio, no comms, it's your own streets, your own village that you're in, depending where you live, then you know who lives round about you by that time. You know the lay of the land, and you're going to have to push out further to gather in supplies. All the supplies that have been close to you have either been taken by you or taken by others. So you're going to have to push that bit further. And the further you push, the greater the risk, because there's more desperation. So you need to be that bit more careful.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, well, time travel again. 6 months, right? So literally, Darwinism has took out most of the people that didn't have any sort of preps or didn't go out looting successfully. What's left to scavenge at that point? That's going to be the question, Ema. What do you think? Do you think there's going to be anything left at that point, or is it going to be we're back to grow everything you're going to eat?
Yeah, I think you're starting to think about other options at that point. I don't know if anyone's read The Long Winter by Laura Ingalls Wilder. She's like the Little House on the Prairie girl. But yeah, like they were in a really desperate situation where they're eating the same food every day, and it's running out. So I suppose you have to think more creatively, and seed saving, or thinking of the season. What can you grow in this season, or what's going to appear in 3 months' time?
Yeah. I mean, there's correct ways to forage, and there's correct ways to hunt, and these ways mean that you sustain what you're taking. So if you're taking dandelions, leave a few of the flower heads and stuff like that, so you're not killing off the plant. Lots of people are not going to do this, though, right? So it's going to be a difficult one to try and not have the entire country foraged and hunted to the point of a desolate wasteland. Is that not? What do you think that'll happen? That kind of thing?
I think after, so what are we talking, 3 months, 6 months down the line?
6 months.
6 months, you've got a lot of dead bodies. 6 months, you should have already.
That's Brian's eating sorted, so we know what Brian's eating.
Mate, I'll be fine. I've got enough for a spare tyre. I could live for the 6 months without eating anything. This is my prepping right here. So.
Some of that long pig.
6 months you've had is a horrible thing to say. The wheat and the chaff have been separated.
Yeah.
You should have sorted out local community groups. You should have made provision for fuel stores for the winter time. You should have secured water supplies. You should have had a plan in place for growing food. And that means you've got to talk to people who do know how to do it, because I don't. But there might be engineering skills that I can transfer. There'll always be somebody in the group that's got a skill set that they can use, and more importantly, teach to everybody else. Because they might become ill.
Yeah. So if I've jumped ahead too far, then for you, when do you start that process of we need to make a community thing, we need to be growing this stuff? I mean, you're not necessarily going to do it after 6 days, because the power might come on day 7, and you've already started digging up the local park. It's not a good look. So at what stage do you think you start broaching that with people?
I think after a couple of weeks talk, you really need to be making inroads and thinking about that seriously, because 2 weeks, your pumping stations have dried up, your sewage systems demolished. People are almost certainly having to look at P-tubes and latrines. You need to burn rubbish. You need to properly separate rubbish. You need to provide care for the children, for people who are ill. You need to have work parties to gather potentially firewood, or secure your local area, foraging groups. There's a lot to think about, a lot to do, and not a lot of time. And that's without any external people coming in and poking and trying to take. So time's the one thing that you can't spend twice, and you don't have a lot of in that situation. But you would almost certainly have to think after week 2, well, it's not come on after now. And let's be honest, even if it did come back on after week 2, the transport and distribution networks are in flux. It'll be months before they're rebuilt. Anything like enough to feed the populace. Yeah. It would be a major undertaking. So after 2 weeks, you need to be thinking ahead for the long term and assume the worst. Personal opinion.
2 weeks. Yeah, it's a good line to say, right, it's really hit the fan. The poo is on the way, and it actually hit the fan. So it's a good cutoff. Ema, with your experience, obviously you've learned as you've gone this whole self-sufficiency thing and growing, which is great on your channel. What kind of timeline do you need? I'm not saying a specific plant, but to plant something that would then sustain you. How long? What's the quickest time that you can put something in the ground and then pull it out and eat and survive?
Oh gosh. I'm sure someone in the comments will know quicker than I can. I mean, because most things you're talking like 3 to 4 months. Yeah. Off the top of my head, I'm thinking things like the cut and come again things, so like spring onions, where you can snip them and they'll start, stick them in water and they'll start growing again. So you sort of right. You say reusable, but yeah.
But if it was en masse and you had to like put half a field of potatoes in your garden, what kind of time is on that? Is that the 2 to 3 months kind of looking?
Yeah, I'd say maybe 3 to 4. I mean, yeah, you can get early. You can get new potatoes, can't you?
Yeah.
But yeah, it's maybe 3 or 4 months. But yeah,
right.
And it's all again. It's weather dependent. It's season dependent. Yeah, it's you're relying on so much there, aren't you?
It's not an easy task, is it? That's why it's speak to somebody in the know, like Brian says. So we all need a farmer on side. What about hunting and fishing, Brian? I think a lot of people will turn to fishing quite early because it's quite a big hobby in this country. Hunting less so, but obviously after hunger sets in, everyone's going to fancy themselves as an amateur hunter, right? And there's going to be arrows, sticks and rocks flying all over the forest.
It's a difficult one again. I mean, even if, so where I live, it's a relatively small village, but even the volume of fish that you would require to catch on a daily basis to feed just the population of here, you need a trawler, right? One guy with a couple of guys out of the village with a fishing rod ain't going to cut it to feed their family, never mind the population as a whole. So you need to have a concerted food plan, marshalling cattle that are nearby farms, putting fish traps in place that don't need any maintenance. You can go and do something else. You don't really have the available time for somebody to stand there with a fishing rod and hope he pulls out a couple of rainbow trout or whatever that, to be fair, might feed him, but his time's valuable, needs to be spent doing something else. You need a passive fishing generation.
Right. Yeah. You're still going to get them trying though, right? It's going to be popular fishing haunts are going to be rammed at that stage. It's probably worth avoiding anywhere, right?
This is that, and that's assuming you've got any fishing places nearby. You might have to walk, and assuming you have to walk, you might have to walk 3 or 4 miles through God knows what to try and get a fish. And then if you've got a fish and you're trying to take that back home, it's a brave assumption to think you're going to make it there with food.
Yeah. Emma?
But just off what Brian said, I mean, if you're ravenous, you're exerting energy to walk those few miles. You have to weigh up, is it worth it? Are you going to get enough, energy back from the fish you've caught if you catch one?
You're assuming people will be thinking logically at that stage?
This is it.
So, I mean, what's that environment do you think is going to be like for you there, Emma? Because obviously you're more rural. You're probably used to hearing the shots of a hunt and farmers' guns and stuff like that. Is hunting something you've looked at, something you would do?
I've not seriously looked at it. I'm interested though. That and I like the taste of venison. But yeah, it's something I'm interested in and would like to learn. But it's like, I know some people have mentioned workshops and places you can learn it from. It's again, it's like it's making the time to suss it out and learn it. But yeah, I would definitely like to.
Yeah. Brian, you're a bit like me, so we're kind of urban, not like major city urban, but a bit more urban. There's people around us. Is there any stage where you need to move on? I mean, I know bugging is always the primary option, but I mean, it's horrible, but every Hollywood film, every series, they end up in some sort of RV and they've got to move on to another town that's got more supplies. Is that an option? Is that something you've thought about?
I've thought about it, but it'd be my very, very last choice, because all your preps, everything that you've got, you're never going to be able to carry it all. You might not be physically capable of getting there, but even if you would like to think you've scouted out a few bug out locations beforehand, you would like to think you've pre-positioned some supplies. If you haven't, I suggest you probably want to do that, because nobody turns into Muffin the Mule overnight and carries all their shit, for want of a better word.
Yeah.
Bugging out would be the last resort. But for me, very, very last resort. I've looked around locally where everything is, how it works. I'm relatively confident I could make a go of it with everybody working together.
Yeah, I've scouted somewhere, which is a horrible thinking, but it's kind of, there's lots of places around the country like this, but it's a place where most of the population of that area are retired or very old. So I'm thinking there might be a lot of leftovers there at that stage, that many months down the line. So
I mean, if you're looking, an ideal place to go would, obviously you've scouted out a water source. It would be something like a local authority owned country house, a country museum, right? Something like that, that's far enough away, but it's got available woodland, it's got a water source, no on-site caretaker. That's where you want to go.
Is that not going to be a massive target?
If people have scouted it out and they know where they're going.
Follow the brown signs pointing to the castle symbol, right?
Yeah, but there's other places over and above that that aren't such a huge picture. They might have been like a wealthy family that's donated it to the local authority, or it could have been turned into a library or whatever. There's lots of council-owned properties that are distributed in the countryside that largely are run by staff with nobody living in them, that are near water sources and woodland. So something like that would be my first choice. Yeah. Hypothetically.
Hypothetically, yeah, definitely. Actually, I've always seen, I've kind of been the opposite of a lot of people. I mean, somebody actually said in the comments earlier, I was scrolling up to try and find it, but my eyes are just going. Somebody's mentioned that I feel sorry for the people that are going to be in an urban environment in this situation at that 30-day point when we were talking then. Now, for me, I think if you're prepared well enough in advance, bugging in an urban environment might actually be more beneficiary, because we always see on books and things like that, you get this mass exodus when the food starts to run out. So it could be a potential advantage to stay there while people are leaving. But Ema, for you, being more rural than we are, does that worry you, the fact that you're going to have food growing on your land and that technically could be a target?
Yeah, a little bit. I feel quite exposed as well. I'm sort of, I mean, there's quite a few houses on this. It's like a main road, but it's surrounded by fields. But then I feel like we're quite exposed. I don't know. It's just like, oh, there's a house, you know, because there's so many passers-by on this road as well. It's it makes me a bit nervous.
What have you put any thought in how you'll deal with that as they come in? I mean, I'm not talking when a roving gang of 100 people come with machetes or anything, but when you start to get the one or two people with a tent on the back trying to find food and stuff, is it going to be welcome with open arms, or is it going to be get off my land?
I think it won't be too welcoming and not too trusting. I think it'll be difficult to trust strangers. And even, I mean, I know some of my neighbors, but not many. And I know community is important, but I think it'll be difficult. Yeah, like someone says in the comments, like if you don't, you know, it's important to build these connections now, because in that stressful scenario, I'm not going to trust, you know, Joe Blogs down, you know, 10 doors down or whatever.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, isn't it? And the long term from that is obviously after 6 months. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. It's just going to be more of the same. You're either going to self-sustain or you're going to perish. So when it comes to the communities, Brian, you're going to be, obviously, if you're in a community, you're going to have pooled your resources to a degree. Everyone should know that cooking meals en masse for a group is more efficient for your food than individual meals. At that stage, do you then send people out because you've got a community? So you go out on scavenging runs?
The thing is, you're not going to be living in isolation. What you do, there'll be other people who've done the same. And there'll be other people who have formed a nucleus and a group in other like-minded communities. Now, some might have done it differently. Some might have done it by force of will and imposed what they want done rather than a collective good. And they might basically go like locusts from point A to point B and either subjugating smaller communities to get their resources and run it on their behalf, sort of thing. Or you might have more communities like-minded like yourself that you can trade. You might have engineers, electricians, farmers. You might not necessarily trade resources, you may, but you'll almost certainly have skill sets that these could exchange. Because Google's gone. So the only Google you've got is going to be up here, and then everybody else round about you.
Yeah, suddenly the pub quiz knowledge will finally come in handy.
Well, it might be that they've got a crop of potatoes. They give you 2 sacks of potatoes, and you give them something else. But part of that could be, well, I'll tell you what, you give us 2 of your oldest teenagers, they can work alongside 2 of our electricians who are making solar arrays or convert a micro-generation scheme. And while they're working with them for 6 months, we'll do an exchange. There's things can be done.
Yeah. So with that kind of group mentality, Emer, is that something that you've thought of for that? We were talking about the security aspect. Is that something you've thought of for that? Because if you did have 6 to 8 extra bodies there, it's more mouths to feed, but it's also more hands to work and it's more defense. Is that something that you've thought of?
I definitely like the idea of it, and not just for security, but kind of like a skill sharing. Because there's lots of things I can't do. So yeah, if someone is handy or can hunt or fish, I think teaming up with these people, like they might not, like I've got 2 wood burning stoves, so they might not have cooking facilities, but maybe there's a sharing of resources that could be useful to have.
How do you assess that? Do you pick these people beforehand, or if somebody's coming to the door going, I can hunt, let me in? Do you take them for the word?
I think unless, well, if you're absolutely starving, then maybe I don't know, maybe you would be open to that. I mean, I'm funny about letting people in the house anyway, that way. But maybe there's something that could be done, cooking outside or whatever. I don't know. I need to think about that one. But yeah, it would be useful to know the person beforehand.
Yeah, it's a difficult one as well, Brian, to get these groups together and gain that trust amongst people. I think we've spoke about it in the past when we talked about mags that, the approach can be approaching neighbours gradually. But at what point is that worth the risk?
I've kind of started doing it when the government brought out the 72-hour thing, right? As worthless long term as that is, in the short term, it's a great talking point. And for me, it's been a good talking point to talk to the neighbours round about and go, have you seen this? And then feed in information that incidentally, I tend to do that, and you should probably do a bit of this. So I try and feed into those round about me in that sort of way. Some of it's light-hearted, some of it's you're going to try and have to build this up slowly. Yeah, you're going to get a few laughs and a chuckle, but when the lights go out, the chuckling will probably stop, and they'll always look for a guiding light. And if you're the one with the light, because you've made preparations and you've got the candles, pardon the pun, they'll always follow an idea, even if it's a bad one. Just try and make sure yours aren't bad.
Yeah. With the I was on about sending the groups out scavenging and stuff like that. What's left at that stage? That's got to be the question, right? Somebody posted a comment on one of my videos saying that have you looked into ship life rafts that are on ships, because they have to have like a little pack in there with emergency supplies. So that could be something that's an untapped resource, because not a lot of people, well, 53 more people will know it now, but you know what I mean? It's one of those things. So at that stage, what's left? Where do you go? Where do you send them people?
I mean, again, like something that Eve had said earlier that rings true here, you've got to balance the risk and the reward. When we were talking about walking a few miles and expending energy for a couple of fish, is it worth putting out 4 or 5 valuable resources, friends, family, loved ones, on a 6 mile, 7 mile, 10 mile walking jaunt into the unknown, possibly beyond the range of comms, and then they don't come back for You know, you don't know what's out there. I think you're going to have to push out patrols, even to protect your own ground. You're always going to have a roving patrol. But the risk versus rewards are a real thing you're going to need to calculate, and it's going to depend on who's in your local area, if you've made any preparations for defence that you can take with you. It depends. It's going to really depend how badly things have fallen at that point.
Yeah. Is there any little Easter eggs you can think of that would be like, nobody will have looked in there? Or are you keeping them to yourself?
No, not at all. I mean, I'm fairly open about it. The one that most people wouldn't go into is like, so a factory that makes or sells sweets or whatever, or couches. Every place that's a business premises has got to have first aid supplies, even if it's the saline out the eye baths, right? Mm-hmm. There's going to be something in there. There might be batteries, it might be cleaning supplies, it might be mops. Every building is an untapped resource. It doesn't matter what it's in. It doesn't have to sell food, store food. Every single building's got value.
Yeah.
Even if it's the sheet materials that they built it out of.
Yeah. So Brian's crew is just going to be like locusts, nothing left. Descend on a building, the roof's gone, the lot.
The crowbar.
It's just going to be his community and just vast empty space around where they've dismantled everything else.
God willing, mate, it will never happen, but I've put a lot of thought in it.
Right, okay. Well, reserve me a seat. Ema, have you thought of anything that's like an untapped resource that other people won't have? I mean, obviously, there's nothing going to be left on the Tesco shelves, but is there any tidbit you could give the people before we go?
I wish I did. I suppose I was thinking like, what's in government buildings? And then, Brian mentioned it, but just office buildings. But no, not really. Can't think of anything beyond that.
Yeah, so canteens, watch yourselves, we're coming. So, I mean, I think we pretty much covered it. Rather than going into the details of ins and outs of looting and how big you can carry a TV, I think that's pretty much all we need to say. Is there anything you want to add, Brian, before we go?
There is some interesting YouTube videos on TVs and making the screen like solar panels. If somebody's genuinely going to steal a TV, at least try and do that with it. There's a couple of guides you might want to look at if you're really desperate for a TV, even if it is a fan.
I've got a spare 60-inch there just sat on a shelf, Brian. I'll swap you for about 4 of them free bentos.
Yeah, I'll pass, mate. I'm all right for solar, but thank you.
I'm going to get some of them pies. Ema, is there anything you'd like to add before we go?
No, just a big thank you, because I've got work to do. Lots of food for thought tonight, so thanks so much.
That's it. Yeah, we've just completely put the bug in Ema again. Last time she came on the Prepper podcast, that was it. Next day I was seeing that I've bought this. Amazon's going to have fun tonight.
A shed full of razor wire.
That's it, yeah. Would you like to say goodbye, Brian?
Goodbye, folks.
Oh,
nice to see you all again.
I'm sorry. Ignore me. Tell us what your last video was and what your next video is on your channel. Brian's channel is the Scottish Prepper 73, as is his name, all linked in the description.
Honestly, I've been really lazy this week. I've had a lot on, so I had planned on doing a video about building a camper van as a bug-out vehicle and showing people how to do it. I just haven't had the time. It's on my to-do list, though.
It's on the to-do list. And what was your last video? Is it still the Enjoy Life one?
That's the one.
That's it. All right. Okay. Brian's done nothing this week.
I am a very bad prepper.
Ema, what was your last video and what's your next video for your channel? Ema's channel is Striving for Self-Sufficiency. Again, linked in the description.
Last video I uploaded earlier today, and it was me on holiday, but just some thoughts on sort of like balance and overthinking and bits and bobs. And also a short on what survived in the garden while I was on holiday. And the next video, tomorrow I'll be filming an unboxing. I got a prepper parcel from a proper prepper. So I'll be unboxing that and sharing what they've sent me.
Awesome. No one sends me a prepper parcel. I don't know. I need to find the friends that you've got. Anyway, guys, it's been awesome having you both here. Another episode. Everyone who's in the chat, 48 of you, I really appreciate you being here. I just quickly have a scan down the last few to make sure there's no questions for anyone here on the panel. People are saying goodbye already. They've had enough of us. No, again, everyone's just having their own conversation. Guys, just so you know, people that are watching now, very soon we'll be having a Q&A for the people on the Prepper Fireside. So in the comments of this video, if you want to ask a question, either specifically to one of us three or also Dan and Josh, who are on the show as well, pop it in there. Or if it's a general question for everyone, pop it in there. I'll make a list of these questions and we'll do a Q&A. The Q&A will also be live, so you can ask questions there and then. So that should be cool. Hopefully that'll be coming up towards the end of the month. Other than that, thank you for watching and hope to see you in the next one. Bye.